Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Tank Talk Podcast, your number one podcast in all the universe and all alternate realities. Thank you so much for being here. I'm here with John from KG Tropicals. And today, John, we are going to be talking about something that I think everybody's going to be interested in. What is it?
My favorite topic of all. It's best filter type. Oh boy, we can get some drama going here. We can have all kinds of fun with this. This is going to be action packed for sure.
Yeah, and what's crazy, at least for me, I think what a lot of people think my favorite filter is actually isn't my favorite filter, just because I think sometimes they see the filters I use and it's not exactly my favorite type of filter. But we have got, there's a million different types, right? We're going to be talking about all the air-driven filters. We got sponge filters, you've got box filters, you've got matten filters, you've got under gravel filters. That's all the air-driven stuff. You've got the internal canister filter. You have the hang-on backs. You've got the external canister. The sump. I think those are the main ones, right? I'm sure we're leaving out a couple of the old school, like the diatomaceous earth, which I don't think we need to get into that one. But there's a lot of options out there, and there's a lot of applications for those filters. So I don't even know where to begin. Where would you like to begin with this subject?
Well, the first thing I want to say is we have done episodes of this podcast on these individual filter types. So if you are trying to go as in depth as possible about trying to find out what the best filter is for you, we've got you covered. Just go back. I would say I'll try to remember to put links and everything in there, but I always say that and then I end up forgetting. But they're out there. Just go to our channel here and search hang on back or canister or whatever it is that you're looking for, and we've got you covered. Okay, here's something that I think here. You mentioned not talking about certain types like the dia whatever earth ones. And I don't even know what that is. So I can't say that I hate those type, but I do think we'd be wasting people's time. Get ready for some people to be offended if we cover filters that nobody uses anymore.
Sure.
So if we spend a lot of time on under gravel filters, I think that's going to be the point of the podcast where people are going to skip it because nobody uses that anymore. I know there's probably some old timers out there that are still using them and swear by them. Yeah, there's people out there that swear by not having any filters at all. I understand. However, I think we should stick with the ones that people are using. Sponge filters, hang on the backs, internal canisters, very popular. External canisters, and I think we could probably even bypass sumps because again, you're talking about big tanks. Usually, you can put a sump on a 5-gallon if you're a crazy person, but I think we should stick with the mainstream ones, the ones that most people are using, and try to come up with an idea of what's the best. I have my opinions. I know the ones that you hate, and I'm going to fight you on that. But yeah, we can have some fun with it.
I like it. So, all right. So for the purposes of this video, it's not because these filters don't have a place, but we're not going to necessarily talk about the box filter because not many people use it. The under gravel filter, we did a whole video on why that has not really a thing as much anymore, although I know some people use it. We're going to eliminate the matten filter because again, it's kind of a niche thing. Some people use them, but it's kind of like a sponge filter, only fixed in place. That then leaves us with standard sponge filters, hang on backs, and then the internal and external canister filters. So if that's our criteria, because those are the most popular and those are usually what most people, 95% of people are choosing between those, let's start with the simple. And that is a sponge filter. Again, we did a whole video on the sponge filter. Can you make a case for why a sponge filter, and I'm going to kind of throw a loop here for you, what is the base case for the sponge filter being the best filter type?
If the circumstances call for it. That's what I would say. Well, see, this is what I was going to suggest. I think what we ought to do is name a scenario and then give our opinions of what we believe the best filter for that scenario is. So rather than just say, okay, let's talk about sponge filters and how good they are, and then hang on the back, let's break down scenarios and then say, this is what we think would be the best for that. And that's, sponge filters is a good way to kind of get into that. I think sponge filters are great for certain circumstances, like yours, for example, where you have not a production setup, but it's a turnover setup. We're bringing fish in, we're quarantining them for a period of time, and then we're sending them back out to people at these swaps. I think you would be a crazy person to employ any other type of filtration in your situation. But if we're talking about somebody that has an aquarium in their living room, then I walk into that living room and I see that 55-gallon tank and it's got a big ugly sponge filter in it. I'm going to be like, well, this person's cheap. Like, they don't care. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Is a sponge filter going to work? Of course. They're very efficient. They're very good. They'll do a great job of keeping that 55-gallon aquarium in your living room looking really, really good. And they're very efficient. But is it the best? I don't know. Sponge filters to me are exceptional forms of filtration, but I just think they're for a certain circumstance, which is one like you have.
Yeah, 100% agree. So the circumstance, I think we'll knock this one out of the way first, because a lot of people don't have huge fish rooms, right? So if you've got a big fish room, big meaning you've got at least, let's say 8 to 10 or more aquariums in the same exact room. So I think that's huge. That's where the economy of scale really starts to play a role into your filter decisions. And that's why on the fish room side, where we've got 30 aquariums over there, it's one central air pump going through one system, lots of sponge filters. And in that particular setup, that is the best setup that I know of, because you're not transferring disease from one tank to another, sharing common filtration systems. If I have a fish breeding tank, right, as I often do, I don't have to worry about intakes sucking up shrimp or sucking up little baby fish. They're easy to maintain. They're cheap, both on the energy side and the initial setup. So to me, that is really this only scenario where I find the sponge filter to be the best option. Right?
Yeah, I'm completely with you. And maybe not the easiest when it comes to maintenance, because you are going to have to manually go in there and do your water changes like your boys do in your fish room. Maybe not as easy as having a centralized system that you can do one big water change on the whole thing. But like you said, the main draw of that would be efficiency and the fact that every single tank is individualized. You're not worried about contamination, not only contamination of disease, but also this fish breeding with, you never know, hormones and things go through the tanks, and eggs can transfer through a system. I've seen it happen where you end up with this type of fish over in this tank and you're like, what is that? I've never put that over there. Crazy things can happen in circulating systems. So yeah, sponge filter keeps everything almost laboratory safe. So that's the scenario. Will it work in other scenarios? Of course. But is it ideal? Maybe not.
All right. So second scenario is you've got a person who's just got a couple of aquariums. These fish tanks are less than 55 gallons. So anywhere from a 10 gallon, maybe up to a 29 gallon. What's the best possible filter?
Where are these tanks?
They're all over the place. There is one in a living room, one in a bedroom. So that would play a role in our decision, location of the aquarium. But let's just say we've got one in an office, one in a bedroom, one in a living room, all smaller tanks.
What kind of fish do we have in them?
Standard tropical fish. So
Okay.
mostly, fish that are appropriate for those size tanks between 10 and 29 gallons. So nothing crazy, nothing aggressive, no putting Mbuna in there, peacock cichlids, because they're too small.
I would love to say one thing, but I'm not going to, because even though overkill is a good thing in certain situations, I think smaller tanks, tropical fish, in an area that you want the best appearance possible, I'm going to go either hang on back or internal canisters. Internal canisters are phenomenal. They're, I would say, equally, depending on which one you get, equally as efficient as hang on the backs. Something like a Shark Pro is a great example of an internal canister filter. Not doing an advertisement here. That is going to do everything that a hang on the back filter would do, including all the media and all that kind of stuff, with the drawback being that it is taking up valuable space in the aquarium like a sponge filter does, but it's definitely a huge upgrade from that sponge filter. And so because of that, with that in mind, again, I'm going to lean on hang on the backs, just because it's out of the tank, quiet, efficient, easy, all of it. I'm going to go hang on the backs.
Yeah, I would agree with you, and that's what I usually recommend to people because I get this question a lot because they see all the sponge filters we run, like, hey, I'm going to add a sponge filter to my 29 gallon that's already got an Aqua Clear 50 in there or something like that. I'm like, why? There's
Yeah.
no point in doing that. The upside to the hang on backs and the internal canister filters is the fact that their mechanical filtration is light years superior to a sponge filter. They're not even in the same ballpark. And you're still getting plenty of biological filtration, more than you would ever need, just like you would for a sponge filter. But to me, the sponge filter, like I said, it's only for the multiple tanks in a single area fish room. If you're in this situation here where you've just got a few aquariums, I would never even look at a sponge filter because I don't want to lose that real estate in the tank. The nice thing about the internal canister filter is while you're losing that real estate, you're not losing as much, and they blend so much
Yeah.
nicer. And the reason you ask the question is where are they at? Because sponge filters can be noisy. The air pumps can be
Hmm.
noisy. You're getting zero noise from your internal canister filter. None.
That's
I've
true.
never heard that thing even once, unless for some reason you let the water level drain to the part where it's starting to suck in air, that's your fault. Um, Hang on back filters are usually pretty quiet, but to me, yeah, those are absolutely the best choices. And what's crazy is I found myself in the fish room side when I have aquariums that are really heavily stocked because we're bringing in a few hundred of a certain type of fish and it's a Cory cat or a Geo, and they're stirring up all kinds of stuff in the substrate. My two little, not little, but my sponge filters are struggling on the mechanical side. I just throw a Cichlids shark in there and boom, within 12 hours, that tank is not, I mean, the water is not only spotless, the substrate is completely cleared out. I'm at a point now where I used to be hang on back, hang on back, hang on back, hang on back. But now I'm like, yeah, you know what? You might actually be better served with that internal canister filter for a couple of reasons. I actually think it does a superior job to mechanical filtration compared to the hang on back,
Okay.
and it's quieter than a hang on back. You hear no splashing. So if that's something that's a bedroom or something like that, you just simply will not hear it.
Yep.
They're easy to clean. At least that particular brand is. And unlike the hang on back, there is no possibility of putting water on the floor. It's not going
So
to happen
true.
unless somehow magically that thing just jumps out of the aquarium all by itself,
Yeah.
or I don't know, it tilts up and it's shooting water straight up instead of in the water. I mean, it's like ridiculous scenarios, but there's no opportunity for that thing to put water on the floor. You don't really have to worry about it not restarting. So if you have a power blip or something, or the hang on back, some of them, if they're not an internal motor, they might not restart. You might hear that grinding noise. Well, that's not going to happen with an internal canister filter. So, and water circulation. Hang on backs are horrible at it. All they're doing is dumping water into the aquarium. The intake is right below where the return is, and it's just doing this, right? It's just kind
Yep.
of cycling water in that one location. Where all the internal canisters, they're shooting water across the tank, and it might be doing a full circle where you're getting full water circulation. So I'm in a paradigm shift here now, and I'll tell you, it's only, and I'm not sponsored by CJ in any way, shape, or form, but those particular internal canister filters have changed my mind. I use the other ones. I use the Penplex. I use the Marine Lands. I couldn't stand those because they were so difficult to disassemble, and then they would just
Hmm.
spew out all kinds of garbage into the aquariums, and then they would never click back together right. At least the CJ brand, they snap together really, really easily. They slide right off and on. They come with the pre-filter sponges. You can put filter floss in the center. Some of them, especially the regular sharks, you can put all the biomedia if that's your thing. It's not
Hmm.
mine, but if that's what you like, you can do that.
Well, it's kind of funny because I'm the guy on this podcast that sells Shark Pros. So I'm the one that should be making that argument. And you know what? You've sold me. I mean, I have to defer to you here. I have to agree, because it is, for everything that you listed and even more than what you just said, because something that, again, it's very minor, but it's something that you can do with a Shark Pro that you cannot do with a marine land hang on the back filter or a fluval hang on the back filter. You can keep that bad boy running while you're doing your maintenance to it, because all you have to do is detach the cartridge area, pull it out. The power head part of it is still running, still circulating. So you're not going to be worrying about those fish being up at the top gasping for air, which, if that ends up happening, why are you taking so long to clean your filter to begin with? But it's just another thing. It just kind of, the fish don't even know that you've done that. And you can, if need be, if your aquascape demands it, you can turn that thing sideways and have that entire filter just go across the back. Put your heater right up against it so that all of that warm water is being drawn through it. Yeah, you nailed it on this one. It's true. The canister, the internal canister is better. There's others that I would stay away from, but yeah, you're right.
And the other thing too, people ask this all the time about the internal canister filters, at least the ones from Ciche, the Sharks, they put the not the floss, but the sponge right up against the intake. So if you're worried about fry getting sucked up or shrimp, unless they're really, really weak and they're just getting sucked against the filter because of the flow, in which case they're probably very unhealthy at that point, you're not worried about necessarily getting anything sucked up there. I know that can be a big concern, especially for other types of internal canister filters. I haven't worried about it at all. I've never had an issue with it.
Yeah, there's an Aquarium. I'm not trying to dump on Aquarium here, but there's an Aquarium internal filter, and I don't even know if it's an internal canister. It's almost like an internal hang-on back filter. It's like if you were to take a hang on the back filter and put it on the inside of the tank. That's what this one is like. I'm not as big a fan of that one as I am really any of the ones, the Penplex that you mentioned, the Marine Land. I don't want to make it seem like this whole podcast is just advertising for products that I sell, but I do think the Shark Pro is the best of the bunch. That's why we sell it on the website. But this Aquarium one, it troubles me. It kind of scares me a little bit, because if the tank is really full, the filter's full of water and it's just kind of sitting there, because the way this filter is, it fills up and it rolls over like a hang on the back filter would. And so I don't know. I don't even know what I'm trying to say here. I should probably edit it out, because I think Aquarium's a great company. I'm just not a fan of that particular filter. You have to have it way, 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 way up so that you don't have that problem with water just sitting inside of it. And unlike any of the others that we just mentioned, if the water level goes down, you start to get that rumbling water noise from hang on the back filters. You'll get it on that Aquarium as well. Some people think that's a problem. Some people, it makes them have to pee, like me. You're not going to have that with the Shark Pro. And if you're particularly lazy and you can't do your maintenance right now, you can just take that Shark Pro and push it down a little bit and get it down below the water. And you don't have to do any, you can delay your maintenance a little bit longer. And they also have a nano version of that too, so that it's adorable. It's tiny. It's the exact same thing, but in a much smaller package. And you can use that for 5 and 10 gallons and stuff like that. Yeah. And you win. You've got 1 point. I've got 0. Internal canister is the way to go.
Those Shark Pro Nanos is really what allowed me in the 900. Is that the larger one?
The 900's the big one. Yeah.
Yeah. So especially the smaller ones, those really made me a fan, because I wasn't expecting a ton from how small they were, but I started using the Shark Pro 320 in 20-gallon aquariums that were absolutely destroyed by fish that I would bring in for quarantine, just because they were stirring up so much stuff that the sponge filter was incapable of catching. And I couldn't believe how that thing would transform the water after just a day. And they are, and I'm not kidding you, they're an absolute workhorse in our fish room side, just for getting stuff to look really, really nice, including the substrate. They're absolutely awesome. My question to you, because I'm not as familiar, obviously you sell those Ciche Sharks. What is the 900, the largest one?
It is. It's the 500, which is one cartridge, the 700, which is 2, and then the 900, which is 3. The 900 is for up to 70 gallons.
Okay, now my question to you is realistically, if it were the only filter that you're using in an aquarium, how big of an aquarium do you think the 900 realistically, getting really great mechanical filtration, how big of an aquarium would you put that in?
It's rated according to CJ for up to 70 gallons. I don't know if I'm being honest. I love CJ. There's no bigger CJ fanboy than me. Um, I don't know if I would use it in a 70 gallon that has 26 Mbunas in it and have that be my sole filtration. Um, I do think that where these really shine is on the smaller aquariums, not necessarily nanos, but 40 and smaller. I think they are the cream of the crop. I mean, I
Yeah.
think they're, even though I did 5 minutes ago talk about how I would probably use hang on the backs. But again, I was looking at this from the standpoint of the bare bones beginner just getting started. Hang on the back is probably going to come with their kit anyway. But uh, if it's a heavily planted tropical fish tank, uh, 70 gallons, I would probably be okay with the 900 on its own. But you know, when you start getting into big bangers and big heavy hitters, I don't know that it would be able to keep up with that much. CJ will tell you it will, and we love CJ, but I don't know how comfortable I would be. I would probably want something else in there to really go with it. But if we're talking about something 40 gallons is smaller, you can run nothing but a Shark Pro, whatever size is appropriate, and you'll be good to go.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I also agree that if you've just got a typical tropical fish community tank, then a 55, 75 gallon with one of those 900s should work just fine.
Sure.
They're just not creating a whole lot of waste and detritus and stuff that has to be sucked out anyway. All right. So we have that scenario. Now, again, we're kind of in that. I think the gray area for me is right around the 55 to 75 gallon, maybe the 90 gallon. You've just got, again, it's somewhere in the house. It's not part of a fish room. What are we doing with that?
That is, I agree with you. That's the tricky one because do you go up to canisters or is that too much? A sump, I think you're asking for trouble if you go for a sump in a tank that size. Hang on the backs are perfectly acceptable. It is. It's tough. That's a tough one because there are so many options. If it were mine, all right, let me ask you this. What kind of fish are we putting in it? It's important to know that with every
It
scenario.
is important to know that. Absolutely. So let's say scenario one, it's a 75 gallon and we have lightly planted, you got the colored gravel, you've got a plastic ship in the center, you maybe got a gourami in there, a red-tailed shark, some tiger barbs. So it's mostly community, but it's a little bit overstocked.
Okay. In that scenario, I'm going hang on the back 10 times out of 10. My personal preference, the number one would be the Seachem title. Again, I don't even want to mention that again because I don't want this to come across as I was like, hey, Jason, let's do an episode advertising my business. But that is to me the best one out there. The second would be the Aqua Clear. And then third, I would go with the Marine Lane Penguin Pro. Any of those, you're going to be in really, really good shape. What you just described to me is a beginner aquarium.
Mhm.
This is somebody that's been keeping aquariums for 6 months. They're excited. They're having fun. This is really neat to them. I want for that person, which is kind of what I was thinking with the first tanks we were talking about. I want for that person the easiest, most foolproof situation that we can get. And that's a hang on the back filter for me. So that's my answer.
Now, I agree with you. And again, I do the top three that you picked would also be my top three. I do like the Seachem Tidal line. I like the Marine Land Pros, the Aqua Clears, especially the revised Aqua Clears are pretty strong. And you could make an argument that the Aqueon Quiet Flow is also a pretty strong
Absolutely.
entry into that as well, because that's got an internal motor and it's, as the name implies, quiet flow.
I
That's going
like
to
it.
be priming. And I think that's huge. We've talked about that in a previous video when we were discussing hang on back filter features. That's what the Seachem Tidal, the Marine Land Pro, and the Aqueon Quiet Flow all have in common is they have the motor that sits in the water so that should you have a power blip after a water change, you always unplug that stuff, but you just plug it right back in. after you fill it up, and boom, it just goes. Whereas some of the
Yep.
other ones, maybe the Aqua Clear, maybe some of the top fin brands and some of those other off brands, if you cut the power either because you're doing tank maintenance or something happens externally, they don't always restart. And so you hear that grinding noise, got to fill the back up with water and do all that stuff again. But my question then is, in this scenario, we've got a 75 gallon, right? How many hang on back filters are you using?
Ooh, this one's tough.
And what size?
With the fish that you just described, we're talking about a 75-gallon tank with gravel, community fish. The gourami's not going to get that big, and we're not talking about a giant gourami here. We're talking about a regular old opaline. Is that how you pronounce it? Opaline,
Yeah, opaline.
opaline.
Yeah.
We're not talking about any heavy hitters here. I would be comfortable with the 75-gallon version of those filters, whichever one. It would be the AC70 for the Aqua Clear. I think that would be the Penguin Pro 350. Or am I wrong?
That
350
would
is
be
the
the
second
350.
from the
Yes.
top.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the 350. Because 375, the top one is the 450.
you're right. Because
Yeah.
the old Penguin was 350. Now the
Yes.
Penguin Pro is 375. Yeah. With the title, it would be the 75. And I'm not sure about the Aqua Clear, but I do want to agree with you. I do think that's a great filter too. That'd be number 4 on my list, the Aqua Clear. Or excuse me, the Quiet
Aqua,
Flow.
yeah.
I think we're safe with that 75. Would you be making a mistake to bump up to the 120 or 110 or whichever? Absolutely not. No, you're fine. But there is a cost difference. And so, I don't think it's absolutely required unless we're talking about an overstock tank, no plants, blah, blah, blah. But the scenario that you laid out to me, I think we're okay for a 75.
I like that. I also like the idea of maybe, and you got to make sure these filters fit over the rim of that 75 gallon, but maybe going with the Marineland 275, the Aqua Clear 50s, or the Seachem Tidal 55s and doubling them up. I just like that water flow option because inevitably with a 4-foot tank, when you only have one filter, you're going to have a dead spot there. So if you're using one filter, chances are you're going to try to put it in the center. You should be putting it in the center as best you can, but then there's a center brace there. So you have to inevitably have to move it over to one side or the other slightly. So I do like the idea of having two. The big problem is especially this. I don't remember this being a problem 10, 15, 20 years ago, but more so now, these filter manufacturers are making the part, the space between the return and the actual filter body so narrow that it's getting increasingly difficult to put an undersized filter on a larger tank, even if you want to double them up. So as
Yep.
long as it fits, I would prefer to have two of a smaller size than one large one. Then you got a backup. If one goes down, you haven't lost all your filtration too. So
I don't hate that idea at all. In fact, I think it's an amazing idea. Double the cost. So there is that. There's not much, no matter what brand we're talking about, the difference between the 55-gallon version and the 75-gallon version is only a few dollars. So it's not, it's not like you're paying half for the filter, but then you're doubling it up. So, it's not like that. So there is a substantial difference in cost, but I think I think you're spot on. I mean, I think it makes sense to keep that water moving. You can accomplish that with some other type of water movement device, whether it be a circulation pump or a small Shark Pro or, a power head or whatever. But no, I love that idea.
so
Double up on it. No problem.
what about the hang on back? What made you choose the hang on back filter for this particular scenario?
Well, again, you described that beginner's aquarium. And so I personally, I think a lot of people might argue with me that sponge filters would be this, but I think the hang on the back filter is the beginner fish keeper's dream. I think it's the perfect scenario for the beginner because you don't really have to understand what's going on here. You just know this media is in here. If it's the Penguin Pros or the Aqua Clear, I keep saying Aqua Clear, Aqueons, you can just replace those cartridges. We've done multiple conversations about those cartridges, but again, from the standpoint of the beginner, I want things to be easy. I want them to take very little time. I don't want anybody to be overwhelmed. I'm not trying to baby anybody, but I just want it to be simple. And I don't think you find anything simpler than hang on the backs. From a maintenance standpoint, installation, if something goes wrong, it's easier to figure out what's going on. I think it's a beginner's perfect scenario.
Yeah, I agree with you too. And that's why I would choose it as well. Just from a maintenance perspective, to me, that's still the easiest filter to maintain, even compared to the internal canister filter, because you're not getting your hands wet at all. I mean, you are when you pull the floss out or whatever, but you're
Fingertips.
not going into the aquarium, and it's accessible. It's right there for you. Pull out the media, rinse it off, right back in it goes. So, yeah, I do think it is the easiest type of filter out there today in terms of maintenance. So, absolutely. Okay.
Especially for the beginner.
Yes, 100%. Well, I mean, it's easiest for everybody, but
Well, sure.
it's actually important for the beginner. Okay, so now same tank size, but now we've got an Mbuna tank. So kind of like what we've got in my gallery, which is probably off screen right now, but we've got 20 to 25 Mbuna cichlids, which are African cichlids they love to eat, they're active, and we have to overstock this tank, right? No plants because you've got rocks everywhere and they'll eat the plants. What are we doing in that scenario? What's our best, right? What's the best filter?
Well, I've always said this when it comes to African cichlids or any fish that needs to be overstocked to curb aggression. The rule is double. So, double hang on the backs, like you suggested, but you're talking about double what the tank requires. So, if it's a 75-gallon tank, I'm going to filter it as if it's 150 gallons. That's my rule when it comes to Mbunas. So that can be accomplished with two Title 75s, two AC 70s, and whatever the numbers are for the Penguin Pro and the Aquarium. Two or one larger canister filter. And in that particular scenario, I would probably go FX4. FX2 would be fine, but I think the FX2 would be better for the first tank you talked about, where it's just some community fish and all of that. But when we're going up to some bangers like Mbunas, I'm going to probably go with an FX4. Plenty of water movement, plenty of mechanical filtration, all the room for biomedia if you use that. It's a little bit more complicated, so maybe not as beginner friendly, but I think you absolutely cannot lose when you're talking about the FX4. If I had to choose between the let's just say two Title 75s or an FX4, I'm probably going to lean FX4. But while you're talking and giving your answer that's probably going to be completely different than mine, I'm going to look up the difference in cost between
Can you
buying
also,
one
while you're doing
FX4.
that, look up while you're in the land of fluval, you said FX4. In my scenario, I actually have this scenario. Like I said, it's right here in the gallery. On that 75 gallon, I have a fluval 407. And I am convinced that is more than enough for
That's
that
a good
particular.
choice.
And so what I'm curious about is how does the 407 price wise compare to the FX2 and FX4? Because that 407 has a ton. I mean, I think there's 5 trays in there, and I mean the water is crystal clear. In my other Mbuna tank in the fish room side, what I wound up doing in that tank is I originally had 2 sponge filters, not even close to being enough for the mechanical filtration. There was all kinds of stuff floating around in the water. I just added one. Originally, it was a Penguin 350 that eventually broke, and then I replaced that with a Seachem Title 75, and that one Seachem Title 75 kept that water crystal clear. Now, I had the 2 sponge filters in there. So like you said, I 100% agree. If you're going hang on back filters, I would 100% do 2 hang on back filters if I'm not using any sponge filters, and then just do the whatever hang on back is rated for your aquarium times 2. But on a canister side, if you wanted to do that, I don't necessarily think it's the best, unless, like for me, I needed it really quiet in the gallery because we're doing stuff like this and I can't have hang on back filters splashing water on the surface of the aquarium and that kind of thing. So I opted for the canister filter because it's so quiet. And in my scenario, that's the best. And so if you have a bedroom tank or you have an office tank where you're constantly on the phone or doing Zoom meetings and you don't want to hear filtration or water noises in the background, canister filter is awesome. If it's not as important because it's in a living room or it's somewhere where it doesn't have to be super quiet, then the best might still be the 2 hang-on backs.
I would make the argument that I'd rather have it be super quiet in my living room than in my office or a bedroom because I like the sound of water in my bedroom.
Okay. Well,
But
yeah. Okay. So bring us the information for prices.
well, first of all, I'm really glad you brought up the 407 because I too am a big fan of that filter. I think it's a great one. I still wouldn't use it in this scenario. I would still go FX4, but I'm on the devil's website, Amazon.com, just because it's the easiest. I don't really know where else to look. I actually have a Fluval price list, but it's on my other computer because I'm a Fluval retailer. I don't sell the canisters though, but the 407 on Amazon right now, $229.99.
Okay.
For the FX4, $309. So we're talking about a $90 difference. And for a 75-gallon Mbuna tank, I think it's $90 well spent, personally. Now, if we're talking about...
We'll agree to disagree. I think it's a waste. Because like I said, I got the 407 here the last year, and that tank is always spotless. And it is... And there's 20... Oh, my, they're all out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14... No, there's 16 Mbuna and 15 Buenos Aires Tetras and 2 bristlenose Plecos.
And
I'm
you
looking
said that's
at
the one, it also has 2 sponge filters in it?
No. This is just the Fluval 407.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's,
well, then I stand corrected. But
well,
I'm a filter overkill guy. So,
yeah. And that's a lot of flow coming out of that the FX4 as well. I mean, a lot. So in Mbuna, they're going to be able to handle that, but you'd have to be aware that if you were trying to use that FX4 in a 75-gallon, just to overfilter my 75-gallon filled with rasboras and tetras and stuff, man, you are going to be, or guppies and angelfish, you're going to be blowing those fish around. Where the 407, I think, it's a nice size filter with an appropriate amount of flow for a 4-foot tank.
The FX4, it doesn't say what it's rated for as far as gallons. At least I haven't found it as I'm skimming through here, but it pumps, with 0 head pressure, all that kind of stuff, 700 gallons per hour.
Okay.
So that 75-gallon tank, you're going to turn over basically 10 times an hour, whereas the 407 actually says it's rated for a 100-gallon aquarium. But again, I don't hate your idea here. I mean, and you're doing it, so it makes sense. I think the 407 is an exceptional filter. I've got one. It's not in use at the moment, but I've got one right over there.
It's sitting over there by the trash. No.
It's completely dry underneath the window, just sitting there collecting dust, literally. But would I use it?
What's the 407 gallons per hour? Because you said the FX4 was 700.
I'm going to look that up here now because it just says it's rated for a 100-gallon aquarium. I mean, people don't maintain consistency on... But isn't it 407? I mean, isn't that the point of the name? Like, isn't it 407 gallons per hour is what it...
Oh, that may be. I don't remember.
I could be wrong, but I thought that's where the names came from. Fluval's going to kill me if I'm wrong there, but I'm trying to find it here. And it's making for great, entertaining podcasts, I'm sure.
Let's see who can find it first.
It's a race. I can't seem to track it down here while we're under pressure.
This would be a really easy thing to do.
Well, this is not a Fluval listing. This is some schmuck selling it out of his garage on Amazon. So they're not gonna put all the important information in there.
It's not the end of the world. It's not super important. The point is that you've got some options there, right? Because even on the Fluval website, I don't see it readily available. So whatever, it doesn't matter. But, okay, next scenario. You've now moved into the land of a 6-foot tank. And we can go a number of different ways with this. You've got a 6-foot. So like behind me here, I've got 2 different scenarios. One is a nano tank where it's just rasboras, tetras, and little tiny pseudomogul rainbows, planted aquarium.
Love that.
The other one on the other side, we've got some big clown loaches that are probably currently hiding in the back. We've got half a dozen geophagus, which are cichlids that like to sand sift. We've got a whole mess load of full-size rainbows and some snakeskin barbs. Pretty heavily stocked tank. What do you do?
We're going to break these up into two of them.
Yeah.
And again, I'm a filter overkill guy. I'm somebody that I've got a sump on here that's capable of flowing 2,800 gallons per hour, and I've got two Whale 500s on this tank. I mean, different tank though. It's twice the size and more than twice the size. So I keep wanting to say fluval. I am a filter overkill guy. I believe you can never have too much. However, in your 125 with all the nano tanks and all the plants, I believe you absolutely could have too much in that particular situation. With all the plants, I see Vallisneria in there that's about 3 feet long and bending over the top. I love it.
That's actually, that's not a val. That's a
That's the
type of
crinum.
Crinum. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I remember you telling
That's
me
the
about that.
geophagus tank. Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was the other way around. Okay, so the nano one is the one with all the driftwood in it that looks like a
Yes.
spider that had to have been one of Joanna's creations, not
Oh,
yours.
that was me. I
Really?
scaped all these things myself. Yeah. She didn't
Wow.
have any hand in it.
I'm proud of you. It looks good. I'm filming. I am filtering both of those tanks very differently. The one with all the plants, I thought was the one that you were saying had the nano tank or the nano fish and the nano fish in there.
Yeah. So this one over here, that's my geophagus tank. That's heavily stocked with the clown
Okay.
loaches.
Okay.
And this one over here, that's the nano tank with pretty much all tiny fish under an inch.
Okay. I'm still going canister because that's my speed when we're talking about big tanks. And I know you have canisters on there yourself. So spoiler alert. The one with the geos and the clown loaches, even though there is that crinum that is huge and is going to flow in the heavy flow, I'm probably still going FX4. I don't think we're in FX6 territory yet. I don't think we need a 5-gallon bucket filtering this thing, but I think I'm still going FX4. And you know what? I'm going FX4 on both of them. That's what I'm doing.
Okay. That's
And
perfectly reasonable.
I've got that, which is right above my right shoulder, heavily planted, a lot of Vallisneria in there that's flowing in the current. Lisa's creation, not mine. We got an FX4 on there. So I practice what I preach.
So what I did with those two is they're the same filter. Both of them are the Oaza Biomaster 850 thermos. So it's a really highly advanced filter. What I like about it is it changes the dynamic of what a canister, the bad side of a canister filter. And the bad side of a canister filter is, of course, cleaning them. Stinks.
Mm-hmm. It does.
But all these Biomasters have a built-in pre-filter that catches just about everything. And so all I have to do, unplug it, I have to take it out from underneath the tank, and then there is it's as long as the canister filter itself, this long pre-filter, rinse it out, put it back in, boom. It takes all of about 5 minutes to maintain that filter, and the rest of the media doesn't get messed up at all. So I put 850s, that's the largest one I think that Oaza actually sells on both of them. On the nano side, it's perfect because you don't want those fish blowing around. I think that was the point you were getting at too, is these are small fish. You throw an FX6 on there, you're going to have a problem because those fish are not going to be able to swim. Same thing if there were discus or angelfish, they might be fighting that flow. Geophagus and the clown loaches and the rainbow fish and the snakeskin barbs, they would be fine with that. So the flow is adequate for 125. Where I think that particular canister might struggle is if I had that thing packed in a really heavily stocked tank. It's great for the nano side. It's adequate for the geophagus side over here, but I would say it's just adequate. It's nothing like they're keeping the tanks crystal clear, but I could tell if it were more heavily stocked or when those geos become 10-inch fish and not 4-inch, we might have to look at a second option in that aquarium, maybe adding a cichlids shark or switching over that canister to something a little bit more that's going to pump a little bit more water.
Let me tell you how much of a crazy person my wife is. We have that FX4 on there, and I'm sure this is going to come up in this conversation. There is the issue, even though that is a very powerful filter that moves a lot of water, when you have as many plants as she does in there, the water kind of gets diverted and it doesn't go straight across the surface of the flow doesn't go across the surface of the water because there's a lot of really big crypts. There's valve, there's pennywort, which is just completely taken over. And so the water is diverted. So she wanted to add another filter to the other end. It's a 6-foot tank. Take a wild guess at what this crazy person added to the other end just to get water moving.
She had another FX4.
No.
Okay, wasn't that crazy?
She added, I'm not kidding you here, she added a Shark Pro Nano 320.
It will get water moving.
She didn't do it, and my wife is a crazy person. I've trained her well, but she did it for the sole purpose of using it basically as like a circulation pump. Yeah. A little power head. She's not looking for it to filter the water. She just wants it to move the water in that area, and it works beautifully. She's so thrilled with it. Like, she is the biggest fan on planet Earth of the Shark Pro Nano. We sold more of them because of her than me, for sure. And the reason why she loves it is because it did the job. It did the trick for that tank. And so that's the only thing, when the Oase filter I've never used. I actually reached out to them to see if they wanted to send me one, and I never even heard back. I think they hate me. I don't know why, but who cares? But I know that's a very powerful filter that will move a lot of water, but we are talking about 6 feet. And so sometimes you may need something on the other end. I love the Shark Pro Nano, but I would not recommend doing what my crazy wife did. It worked, but you may need something to move a little bit more water on the other end, but it's just going to completely depend on your situation.
And one thing, again, just to be clear, why we're suggesting the filters that we are suggesting with the external canister filter, what you're getting is a very different intake and return location. And so in the 125s behind me, you have the intake on one side of that 125 and the return on the other side. And that means the water is flowing from one side to the other, where if I were to put, let's say, 2 hang-on back filters in that aquarium, again, what I'm getting on either side is water dumping in very close to the intake, and they're just kind of doing the circular motion on either side of the aquarium. You could potentially put 3 hang-on backs in there, which is not a crazy thing. But by the time you put 3, let's say 3 Tidal 110s on there, that's $300. You could have put the FX4 on there at that point, right? And
absolutely,
you would have gotten legitimately much better mechanical filtration, a whole lot more capacity when it comes to just all those trays, especially if it was, you're talking FX4, the size of those trays. Even the Biomaster 850, it's got 7 trays. So it would be like taking, it's a really, it is in that stand, it barely clears that 125 stand. It is a very tall canister.
Well, it's got a big heater built into it too, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah. Well, the thermos do. So you can get them with or without the built-in inline heater. And so, it's got to be rated for the size tank that it's supposed to filter. So I think it's at least a 250, maybe 300 watt heater.
Right.
So it's a great filter. Fluvels are a great filter as well. So now we move into that heavily stocked 6 foot all the way up to, let's say, a typical size. I don't want to get too crazy, but like a 240, anywhere from a 125 to a 240. You got big guys in there, maybe some Oscars, or you're into Midas cichlids, or hey, I've got a tank full of just big South American fish, or maybe peacocks. Are we changing our recommendations at all?
Yes. Are we excluding sumps? Are we just going to not talk about
No,
sumps?
we don't have to exclude them.
Okay.
I mean, I know we kind of said we sort of were, but I don't know if that's necessarily the case at that point.
Yeah, I was the one that suggested we not talk about them, and then I'm bringing them up. But this is where we need to go hard. I mean, we need to go hardcore with the filtration. With a tank that size, particularly 240, you're going to have bangers in there. You're not buying a 240 to put your little micro rainbows or CPDs in. I mean, you're putting big fish. That's the whole reason why you're getting it. Big fish produce big waste. They eat a lot of big food. I'm going hard. If we're not going to talk about sumps, which I realize it is an option, but we'll talk about all the options. I'm going 2 big canisters on a tank that size. One of the nicest collection of aquariums I've seen, which motivated me to completely remodel all of mine, was when I was with a veterans at a veterans house, two of them actually. They had multiple large aquariums with a lot of African cichlids, just heavy hitters, and they had like 3 times the filtration in these tanks than what the tank would actually call for. And the tanks were pristine. They looked gorgeous. They looked amazing. It made me want to add filtration to all of mine. And every single time I would be like, okay, this 250 or 240 here, what kind of filtration? Oh, that one I've got a Tidal 110 in the back and 2 FX6s. I'm like, whoa, we're talking hardcore overkill filtration here. But like we've talked about through this whole episode, the situation demanded it. So, but if we, my answer would be probably, oh, what the heck? I'm going 2 FX6s. Okay. That's crazy talk, but that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, that is an option. But at that point, I really do start to seriously consider the sump system. I mean, we don't have to go too crazy in depth with it. We've talked about them before, but I like the sump system, one, because I think one thing we haven't really discussed is power utilization. We kind of briefly touched on it with the sponge filters and having multiple aquariums, but I really felt that firsthand. So as an example, the gallery that's behind me right now is 5 aquariums. I took 30 fish tanks down. They were all on sponge filters, except I had 2 hang-on backs on a couple of 125s. I took all those aquariums down, all the lighting, the 2 hang-on backs, and then I just put in these 5 aquariums with 5 sumps. My power bill went up considerably because canister, sorry. Yes, not some, sorry. Yeah. 5 canister filters, but I took all the lighting down. I took 2 hang-on back filters down, and the power bill went up by like $25-30 a month because of those 5 canister filters that are on those tanks. So be aware as you start to go from really super economical sponge filters doing multiple tanks to anything that you've got to plug in, right? So whether it's an internal canister, your hang-on backs, your big boys, like you're talking FX4, FX6, they do a great job because they have a big power hungry pump in there that is blowing out 700 or whatever it is, 900 gallons per hour on some of those larger ones. And that's going to cost you money. So when you start talking about, hey man, I'm throwing 2 FX6s on a 240, you might want to start looking at, okay, well, with a sump and I've got a one large pump, can I save $25 a month, right? In which case that sump, the added cost of the initial sump, it might pay for itself in a year or 18 months.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree. I'm sitting here looking at 3 tanks right now that all have sumps on them, and they do very well. But I'm going to be adding a CJ Whale 500 to all 3 of those tanks.
Nice.
And here's why. I mean, I think I have a good reason why. I love sumps. I've got African cichlids in 2 of the tanks. Soon to be all 3 240s are going to have African cichlids. It's going to be a peacock tank, a hap tank, and an Mbuna tank. I don't like the fact that everything is done by overflow. And with Mbunas, African cichlids in general, they produce a ton of waste. And so I've constantly got waste buildup around the bottom. So my reasoning for wanting to put a canister in there is just something to hopefully sweep up some of that debris. Again, I learned this from Sick Psyche and Bill Mason, all military veterans that I did videos with. Having a circulation pump to push that waste to one side and then having the intake of a canister over there to kind of draw that in. Yeah, you have to maintain your canisters more, but that's the rationale with doing all of that. That's why I'm going to do that. But again, I've been running my 1240. It's always been full of African cichlids since 2016 on just the one sump, and it's been perfectly fine. It's just got that buildup, which there's nothing that can be done about that. But the reason why there's buildup there is because it's all done by overflow. Everything has to go in the top, and the poop is not just floating up there and then going through the overflow. So that's the only drawback to it. But I agree, when you need big time filtration, sump is going to be the way to go. And you got a lot of options with sumps too. So,
and they're easier to maintain, right? Because once you've got a filter sock on there, I know I've got a buddy who's got a, 240 or 260. In fact, it was a video I did of, you want to see a heavily stocked tank. This is probably close to the heaviest stock tank I've ever seen. He had a 240 or 260 with all massive fish. So your Midas, your red devils, like all these big fish. And I mean, the tank was like, dude, this thing is really heavily stocked. And he had a big sump in there and he built it all himself. And one of the things that he did is he put a couple of power heads towards the bottom because it's the same issue that you're talking about. So he had a lot of rock work in there and he put one behind the rock work. And I think there was a second one. And what it was supposed to do was just kind of sweep up all of that waste that was kind of falling down there and it would get caught up in the sump. And it seemed to be working out really well because the tank was crystal clear. But then what he did is he was like, yeah, I would just take these filter socks off every couple of days, throw them in the washing machine, rinse them out, throw them in the washing machine, put the other one on and just keep rotating them through every few days. And it worked out really great. And he's like, I barely had to touch the filter media, the filter floss and stuff, because I just kept changing out the filter sock every few days. So that can be a lot easier than messing even with a canister filter or a hang-on back filter at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue with you. It's definitely true. Now, for me personally, I would rather remove the filter and carry it over to my sink. Yeah, it's heavy, but I'm only doing this once every couple of months.
Yeah.
So picking it up, carrying it over to the sink, the way I don't have to worry about splashing water everywhere, or even carrying it out to the yard and using my hose, which I've done many times. I personally disagree with what you said about sumps being easier to maintain, unless that's all you're doing is swapping out the filter sock. Then that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
But if you're really getting in there and cleaning out the sponges and all that kind of stuff, because in my sumps, I've got the sock tower, but then next to that, I've got a tower that's full of mechanical and biomedia. And so I got to get in there and clean out those sponges and stuff like that. I would much rather remove it and take it somewhere convenient because I got a bad back. I'd rather do that than try to crawl my big butt underneath there and reach into it and do all of that. But we're splitting hairs here. It's basically what it is that you personally prefer. I don't know if there's a better way to go, whether it's multiple canisters or sumps. I do think you get to a point though where a canister filter is just going to be completely useless. I mean, I think if you're at like 350 gallon and above, and you're trying to run that with just canisters, unless you're putting 4 FX6s in there, I think you probably should have just got a sump.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think hopefully one of the things, as we've talked about this today, that we've made clear, even though we didn't say it from the outset, and that is the perfect filter, the best filter is dependent upon your setup, the number of aquariums you have, where they're located, the size, the stocking level. Do you need it to be really quiet? Do you not care as much about noise, cost, energy? You're considering all those things. And that's why it drives me crazy when I see some of the comments of some of the past filter videos and people get like angry. It's like Apple versus Samsung and Ford versus Chevy. You start telling people that their filtration method isn't the best one ever, and they lose their stuff. And I promise you, in the comments section below, there will be people losing their stuff because we said this filter is subpar or it's not the greatest thing in the world. What do you mean it's not the greatest? It's the greatest. You guys have no idea what you're talking about. It's like, well,
you're just uneducated.
A narrow myopic view, yeah, in some cases, but there is no one size fits all. It depends on many factors, and it also depends on your priorities. Do you care if you've got to clean a canister filter once every couple months? Do you want the super easy way to maintain a filter? Do you have really nice hardwood floors and your wife or your husband or whoever, your significant other, would absolutely go ballistic and make you quit the fish hobby if a drop of water hits the floor, the carpet, the hardwood, and you're like, I cannot have that. And by the way, if that's the case, there are only 2 filters we talked about that aren't going to put water on the floor: internal canister, sponge filters, provided that you have the check valves or your pump is above the tank. Hang on backs, canisters, there's a potential there. Does it happen all the time? No. Can it happen? Absolutely. And when it happens, especially if we just had this happen maybe a month ago. Hang on back filter, that little piece, the leveling piece, fell off. The hang on back kind of leaned back a little bit.
Oh no.
It got a little bit trapped up, top 125. I'm like, why is there an inch of water missing from the top 125? Next question is, where is it? Look under the tank, and again, our floor is sloped. but there's that inch of water. How much was that inch of water? Probably 3 or 4 gallons, right? But it had been coming out of the back of the tank. And the only reason why I knew that is that tank, actually that was a Seachem Title 110 where that happened, is because it was grinding. I heard it from upstairs. I'm like, why? The only reason those things make noise is when your tank is not properly filled, by the way, or it's clogged up with duckweed or something, which I'm like, well, we don't have duckweed in that tank. I'm like, uh-oh. So I came down here and but there's the point is there's a lot of potential options out there, and you have to choose those options based on your priorities.
Yeah. And, you and I personally, Jason, have our own preferences as far as the brands and things like that go. But I don't think that was our motivation here. I think what we were trying to do is introduce the concepts: internal canister filter versus hang on the back filter versus canister. It's you get whatever brand you want and whatever you can afford. We have our favorites, and so and I'm particularly biased towards those ones that are my favorites. But if I'm not going to be mad at you if your favorite filter is the Aquarium Quiet Flow. I mean, hey, if I'm saying that the perfect filter for your situation is a hang on the back, I don't care what brand you get. I'm not going to look down on somebody for a particular brand, but those are the ones that we like. And so that's what we recommend to you. Of course, almost everything we talked about today is available on my website, keepfishkeeping.com, but not doing an advertisement, but kind of am. But yeah, I mean, there are people that are hardcore in their belief that their filter is the best. And if that's you, good. I'm glad it's working out for you. I'm glad you're enjoying this hobby. There's no reason to go smear people on social media because they disagree with you. We know there are certain people in the online world that will absolutely do that. Hopefully that doesn't happen here.
Yeah. Well, I think unless you've got anything else, I think we've pretty much exhausted our options, right? For the most part.
Yeah, this was fun. I love talking filters. I could do it every hour of every day. So this was a good time.
I could too. Yeah. So everybody, as always, thank you so much for being here. We love that you're here. We love the comments that you leave. We read them and we collectively respond to just about every single one as we are able to. So leave the comments, share the videos. Really appreciate it. We're going to be back same time, same place next Monday morning. Have a great week, everyone, and we'll see you next week.